Hello there, y'all. Come on in and grab a seat. As you can see, I've changed the place up a little bit, as well as made some changes to myself. There's just something so fun about getting something that feels like you and adding it to your clothes, bags, or anywhere else that you want to show off. It's also great to do this sort of thing with your games, allowing you to denote factions, kingdoms, groups, and societies. Heck, I've had more than a few games where I've made a team logo, like in my Pokemon Tabletop United game where we called ourselves the Fated Few. But what makes a good emblem or logo? Sorry, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I'm Rain, and this is Fennec Fables, where we delve into some fun prompts for adding depth to your TTRPG games, to give you something interesting to work on as an idea or to think about as you play or prepare. In this special episode, I'll be working in tandem with a fantastic artist who makes and designs emblems for TTRPGs, Henry, who operates Emblem Trove. They're actually the ones that helped to make the logo for this channel. I'll have the link to their socials down below, and I do recommend checking them out. This is not a paid sponsorship, they're just willing to help me out with the topic. And I wanted to explore, and when we get access to this type of expert in the field, you take your chance. If you've been enjoying these videos and collabs, please do subscribe to the channel, it really helps me out. And if you can, share this video around. We will be going over some things that we think will make for an important logo, and then we'll be giving our own inputs and examples that we feel exemplify the worst and best ways of getting this across. Before we get started, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, Henry? What got you started in making emblems?
Thanks, Rain. I am honored to be here. A bit of background about myself. I'm originally from Taiwan, but I have lived in the States, Ireland, and the UK with my family and for studies. I've always been interested in symbols and icons. At one, our Aboriginals have their own distinguished patterns. The Celtics have their own cool spirals and triskelions, and in the UK, they have various coats of armor from the Middle Ages. As for the States, they sure do love their flags, don't they? I have been doing graphic design for fun for 5 years now, and only just started this gig to create emblems, military patches, and logos for TTRPGs since, well, I'm not really good at making character art. But I still want to contribute to the community by creating something that represents their character. Not only characters, but factions that can be represented in the TTRPG worlds. So, yeah, that's me.
Thanks for that. It's so cool to get a peek behind the curtain of the creators. With that handled, let's get on to the topic at hand. Whenever I've made a logo in the past, some of the most important aspects, at least in my own experience, have been making sure that the first and foremost, it carries whatever message you're trying to convey, whether that be strength, resolve, fear, purity, or heck, even wackiness. Above all else, you should be able to get a sense of what the thing is at a first glance. The impact of that first visual is very important. If they don't like it on first look, it's unlikely they will in a second. As for that what helps makes these strong impressions thanks to Henry's expertise, we're going to break that down. After talking with him for a while and learning quite a bit, we found a few key details, and to start, we're going to discuss the importance of an appropriate style. You want it to be art in its own right, but it's important to have it as an insignia or an emblem that is in your game's mesh. Well, hopefully it will mesh anyways, with your various groups and guilds that you'd be using it with. It is intended, after all, to make a statement about the group, whether that be its goals, its histories, or its ethos. Style conveys information on both place and time. What are your thoughts on this, Henry?
Now, first, I would like to preface that I am not an expert, but I have my fair share of experience when it comes to emblem design, and I could provide insights into the essential tips that I always keep in mind when it comes to designing, which I would love to share with you all. To quote Captain Barbossa from the Pirates of the Caribbean, what I'm saying are more like guidelines than actual rules. That is a terrible accent. Feel free to experiment. Also, you learn more from failures than from successes. And always, always get feedback from your peers. Constructive criticism is important to improve your work. Whew. Anyways, off to the first topic.
Hey there, guys. So it seems somehow in the shuffle of making this video, This segment of the video went missing, and unfortunately I do not want to make him have to re-record, so I'm just going to record this missing section, and you guys get to laugh at how hilarious it is to do videos sometimes. So anyways, he was going to say that firstly, he agrees with me when designing an emblem for a character or faction, it's crucial to consider whether your design effectively represents the intended character or faction. Otherwise, players may not have a positive reaction or could be left confused about your creation. Style is among a few fundamental factors that you should consider before and after you make an emblem. When we think about the style of an emblem, to me, which is to be what he was going to say, that means whether the emblem fits in the world of your TTRPG campaign and the character's faction. Character and or faction, to be honest. If you look across emblems and logos across history, you can see the style changes a lot based on the time period. Moreover, the style changes across all forms of occupation as well. What do I mean by this? And again, this is him. Take your standard heraldry or coat of arms from the medieval period. Insert sample here. Now let's take a look at military patches from World War II. Sample here. See how that style is different. The shapes, the colors, the iconographies used are quite different, and you can immediately pinpoint the time period that they were used in. Again, sorry about this one. I do think it's kind of funny that, this video has been making for about 2 years, and files got lost. But here we are. And back to video version of me. All fantastic points. Time is a crucial factor for giving details across, as well as region. I'm sure there are quite a few things that, while common in one space, are unheard of in another, and that can lead to some interesting details for sure. I see you mentioned color in that section, and I think that's a key detail that we cannot overlook. The color palette one chooses for a piece can not only make it more striking, but also give it both a more layered meaning and make it more visible, especially in the context of military logos or battle standards, don't you think? To use a media source that I feel folks are more confident in, think of how movies and television handle things. Often in films, you will see scenes tinged with red lights or hues to denote that there is danger or passion, while the color blue can be used to exude a feeling of loneliness or even calm, depending on that whole scenario. When you are making images for heraldries and emblems, how do you take advantage of these shorthands in language of the color, Henry? Are there specific details that color that people may want to keep in mind as they make an image?
Excellent questions, Rain. A lot to dive into. What Rain pointed out with the use of colors in film to depict emotions can definitely be applied to making emblems too. Think about some factions from pop culture, like the houses from Game of Thrones, the Hogwarts houses, and even the nations from Avatar: The Last Airbender. What vibes did you get when you saw the emblems for the first time? Was it easy identifying the good guys from the bad guys? What about the people associated with the emblem? Do the colors match their mood and personality? If all the above questions were answered, then you better thank the designers for doing their job right. The next time that you're applying color to an emblem, ask yourself, what vibes do I want this emblem to give off of? Which colors can elicit the reactions that I want from my audience? There is a joy in showing an emblem of an enemy that the players absolutely hate, and for them to go, "Oh, no, not this b***." There are a whole array of colors out there, and I haven't even touched upon the different color combinations out there that could elicit certain emotions. You got the basic bright colors, the red, yellow, orange to depict strong emotions, and the mellow colors, your blue, green, purple to show soft emotions to start off with. But people from different cultures and backgrounds have different interpretations of color and the feelings that they elicit. So rather than me explaining which colors match, I think it's better that you go out, do your research, and experiment yourself. Just remember that which emblem that you design, color is a major factor to think about.
I hadn't considered the implication of regional color choices when we started this, but you make for a very sound point. Areas will have their own feelings to particular colors and use them more readily. For example, when I think of something Swedish, I tend to think of the colors light blue and yellow, as opposed to when I think of something from Mexico, which I tend to tie more to vibrant reds and greens. There's a lot to consider depending on how deep and meaningful you wish to make your choices. There, of course, are also decisions to be based not just from the places they are from, but on what they wish to convey. You generally wouldn't have your serious group of kidnappers and brainwashers using pink and chartreuse. Unless they're trying to fly under the radar, but that's a whole other thing. It seems like there's a lot to consider in color choices beyond the shade. When you were mentioning combinations, I know that there are also descriptions from them long ago from my elementary art class discussing things like complementary and contrasting colors, with one being colors that work well together and the other being ones that help stand out against them. Is this something that you think that somebody should be considering in particular if they were making a battle standard? I'd imagine that standing out quite a bit to do with decisions in that particular area.
That's a very good point, Rain. And this leads to our next topic of simplicity and clarity. When it comes to designing emblems or logos, we always want to include different design elements and color that we think would effectively illustrate our character or faction. However, when an emblem has too many elements or is too complex in design, the intended meaning gets lost in translation. Instead of your players feel joy and a sigh of relief as they see the banner of their allies marching over the distance and joining them in battle, your players might be too focused on and criticizing the decisions of the allies' banner to be in the shape of a hexagon, divided into 6 parts, each of them containing a mystical animal. Ugh.
Oh man, that looks absolutely busy. How would anybody even be able to recognize that at a distance? When we get into creation, we tend to fall into this big and extravagant affair when really less can be more. I feel like seeing that at a distance would just be a mishmash of things, which kind of fails the intent. To return to the mention of film language, how we frame or center a piece is almost as important as what's being depicted. For example, let's think of how we convey information via art. Many of us nowadays are more familiar with visual mediums such as film, which carry specific actions, lightings, and even movements of the camera to denote information to us without us even knowing it. Such terms as the Dutch tilt, in which the camera is turned while focused on a subject's face, is meant to denote unease or instability, while the very famous dolly zoom is often used to convey vertigo or a drastic and sudden realization. These uses of focus help to provide clarity in a visual medium like film, much akin to how certain lighting can also convey information. With that being a focus on moving image, are there any similar techniques that are more useful for still images like emblems or logos? There has to be a better way of making images stand out when you're trying to aim for clarity at a distance, what can you really use to remedy that sort of issue when you're coming up with these ideas or creating the color palette for your designs?
Well, you can apply the rule of tincture. This is a heraldry design philosophy that is found in some traditions, coined by a guy named Humphrey Lewald in 1568, who stated, "Metal should not be put on metal, nor color on color." This rule states that ore and argent, commonly known as gold and silver, cannot be placed upon each other. And colors, tinctures that are not gold and silver, cannot be placed upon other colors, which you can see here. It's simple, right? Just don't mix the colors. That's it. Job done. You mastered it. Yay! Wrong. The rule of tincture goes way deeper. So deep that a British lad by the name of Arthur Charles Fox Davis, wow, that name is posh, even wrote a book on the Complete Guide to Heraldry, which became the standard work of heraldry in England. In the book, it describes that heraldic emblems need to be easily recognized. In some cases, the color combinations in heraldry are hard to tell apart, like dark colors on top of each other or light metals on top of each other. Therefore, in heraldic designs, when fields or symbols are divided into alternating bands of color and metals, they make sure that each band alternates between a color and a metal side by side. Now, there are exceptions to the rule of tincture, and boy, it's a lot. I'm gonna include this table of metals and colors as I am explaining this. I hope it helps. Anyways, here are some exceptions, just to show you how specific they can be. Okay, first one. Partitions may be composed of 2 metals or 2 colors. Likewise, juxtaposition of tinctures is ignored when quartering. So, check out the flag of Maryland, a good juxtapositions of the tinctures and symmetry with the color scheme. And now look at the arms of the Eric of Pomerania. Absolutely no juxtaposition regarding the rule whatsoever. Charges. Any emblem or device occupying the field of a escutcheon shield can be placed over a composite field. Perfect example, this is the arms of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. I kid you not, they have such a posh way of describing the designs out, and it goes something like this. Array of 10 azure and argent, overall a lion jewels crowned or. Which to common folk means a red lion with a gold crown over a blue and silver field. The red lion should violate the rule since it overlaps the blue, but since the lion is a charge, it's an exception? Small details of a charge are exempt. For example, argent, a lion jewels crowned or a silver lion with a gold crown. They're 2 metals, but this is a small enough change that it would not be deemed a violation. Alright, I could do this. Okay. A charge composed of a metal and color may be placed upon a field of either the arms of the steward, bears, or a fess checky, azure, and argent. Look at the checkered blue and silver on that gold background. Apparently, it doesn't violate the rule. Okay. Augmentations of honor, modification, or addition to a coat of arms, typically given by a monarch as either a mere mark of favor or a reward of recognition for some exemplary act, are not subjected to the rule. Coat of armor Paris bears jewels, a ship on water, argent on a chief azure, a semi of fleur-de-lis or. Let me read out from my notes here. The background, the Paris arms, is that it belongs to the corporation or guild established by the royal privilege in 1170, with the rights for commercial navigation on the sign between Paris and Mantes, which explains the silver ship and ocean in front of the red background, and the pompous fleur-de-lis belonging to the French monarch. Well, if the French monarch is fine with it, then so am I. Similarly, marks of cadency. Any systematic way to distinguish arms displayed by descendants of the holder of a coat of arms when those family members have not been granted arms in their own rights are not subject to the rule. The coat of arms of the House of Anjou is azure 3 fleur-de-lis and border gules. Jewels. I don't really care anymore. Just stick one of these few symbols in front of the fleur-de-lis and you're fine. Alright. The rule of tincture is not as simple as we thought, because these perceptions are ridiculous if you think about it. At this point, the exceptions are so numerous that one wonders whether the rule is really meaningful. Some designers probably read Fox Davis's books and were like, yeah, no. Screw that. And made their own design that have completely violated the rule. Don't believe me? Check out the coat of arms of Albania and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. They simply could not give a crap about the rule of tincture. It's a lot to digest, and you may be wondering, what's the point? When it comes to applying colors, do I apply the rule of tincture or do I not? And the answer is, you could do both. Doing research into the rule of tincture made me realize that the art of emblems is so incredibly nuanced. The rule of tincture was proposed to give artists a systematic way of producing emblems and heraldries. But does that mean you have to follow it forever? I mean, Looking at all the exceptions to the rule that I have listed, I don't think you should take it as verbatim. That's not to discredit the rule of tincture in any way. I think it's a great guideline to keep in mind when you're thinking about choosing color while not overcomplicating your emblem design. Moreover, you could think about the rule and its exceptions when you think about the backstory to your faction or character. Are they someone who follows tradition? Or do they rebel against it? Or somewhere in between?
You weren't kidding when you were mentioning that it could get complicated, but it seems like with most art, the skill is knowing when to follow the rules and when to disregard it entirely. It sounds like it would make a great base for anyone to really begin with, especially if they're chasing a particular flair or style for sure, and then diverge from it when it doesn't really suit their needs. I think it all really comes down to knowing the intent you're trying to convey and making sure that it is understandable in the context it would be taken. For example, earlier you mentioned one of the key reasons for the rule of tincture was to help things be easily recognized. So even if you happen to have quite a bit of detail like that heraldry which is just chock full of fleur-de-lis, the fact that it's so distinctive means that even though it might be busy, it still functions as a clear conveyance of information. To balance the desires of simplicity and clarity will be a big challenge if you're aiming to make things also memorable, but easy to replicate and use. It's very similar to logos for fast food restaurants in a way. Everyone will, of course, immediately recognize the golden arches to the point that a gold M is immediately recognizable to all that have even passed a look at it. But in the same way, the mermaid logo is also immensely recognizable, even though it has had many iterations and zoomed ever closer in onto her face. Though what a mermaid has to do with coffee is actually a peculiar story that we do not have time to dig into this particular video, but it does raise up a final bit, very important topic, that being iconography. The shorthand is used to convey information and to tie images to a location. Earlier, you mentioned things like the Triskelion and Aboriginal patterns. What can you tell us about that?
Sure thing, Rain. As you said, we can't forget about iconography in emblem making. You mentioned tying images to a location while talking about the shorthand. Well, the same can be said about iconography. In addition, the same iconography may be conveyed differently in other parts of the world. For example, clan patterns are common, right? The best examples are tartans on Scottish kilts, which are associated with the clans and the amount of color patterns that they have. I mean, you've probably seen a kilt and probably thought, Scotland! 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 But I would like to show off some clan patterns from my own country. In Taiwan, the Aboriginals have their own distinguished patterns that could differentiate the tribes. How many, you ask? Well, 16. I'm Taiwanese and I know like 3 of them. Nevertheless, I think my country's clan patterns are pretty cool. I also mentioned the Triskelion as a symbol that I'm quite familiar with while growing up in Ireland, and it is quite a significant piece of iconography, with lots of interesting origins and set locations. The first documented Triskelions were found in Malta, Ireland, and Mycenaean Greece. A little bit of lore for the history nerds out there. Triskelion was related to European Iron Age culture and to related Celtic traditions as well. It is a symbol that has stood the test of time, as you can find it on Greek pottery and coinage, Gothic architecture, or in medieval heraldry, as seen here in the arms of the King of Man. Speaking of the King of Man, the Isle of Man also has Triskelion on it, as well as the flag of Sicily. That straight up looks like my sleep paralysis demon. As you can see, a simple Triskelion can be found in so many countries, each with their own interpretation of the 3 swirling symbols, or 3-legged symbols if you want to cater to those with a feet fetish. I do want to shout out my favorite iconographies that I have seen on emblems. We have the Camon, or family crests, that were used by the aristocracy over 1,000 years ago, but over time they were adopted by samurais, merchants, and many others. Today, they are thought to be between 20,000 or 25,000 in use. The various motifs that people like to use range from plants, nature, buildings, and vehicles, and receptacles of patterns. That one says threesomes. I have the mind of a child, For animals, turtles and cranes are commonly used in camons to symbolize longevity, which carry the meaning of bestowing the family a long and prosperous life. Botanical crests like the wisteria and paulownia usually represent fortune, fame, wealth, elegance, and high status. The Tokugawa shogunates, who ruled Japan from 1603 to 1867, had the triple hollyhock. They are more commonly used in aristocratic families since, well, they kind of fit those representations. Camons related to vehicles were called kuramamon, or carriage crests, which depicts by the symbol of a wheel, usually indicating the prosperity of the noble. For building type crests, we have the torimon, derived from the symbol of the Torii Shrine Gate, which would indicate that the person is from a family of Shinto priests. It's not uncommon for families to have symbols related to Buddhist or Shinto motifs as well. One of the receptacles and pattern crests is the Hojo clan, which you could see 3 triangles and a very nice pattern. Hey, wait a minute. Like use nature motifs like the moon, mountain, or thunder are used to convey faith that is respectful to nature and offer prayers for a good harvest. As you can see, with so many motifs, each family crests have their own meaning.
I had never known things like that about the carriage tags, though I am quite familiar with kilts as I'm very much a fan. It's interesting to see how similar images crop up in multiple places, like you mentioned with the Triskelion. Goes to show just how similar people are. We're all looking for ways to show who we are and where we're from. When you were mentioning birds symbolizing longevity, there's actually a bit that it reminded me of from medieval art, being that ermines can be used to represent many things. Some folks may be familiar with this image. To many, this is a beautiful image of a woman with an ermine, and that's the end of it. But there's a lot of visual and subtle language that is being conveyed here. In the time of this painting's creation, white ermines were used to be a shorthand to denote purity amongst some of the other interesting details. The woman in this painting, and apologies if I get the pronunciation wrong, Cecilia Gallerani, was also the mistress of the famous Duke Ludovico Sforza, who was known by the nickname the White Ermine, allowing for a subtle way of him to be able to be in a portrait with her while also still being married. If you can, as we do not have the time to go over all of it, I do recommend checking it out as it's quite interesting and has a lot of drama for those that are interested in that sort of thing. It actually has me thinking about how one symbol can mean 2 entirely different things if you attribute it to different people. As an example, for the Greeks, the owl is attributed to Athena, the goddess of wisdom among many other things. The owl is there often seen as being of wisdom and enlightenment. On the opposite end of the spectrum though, the Cherokee, among many other groups, viewed the owl as a bit of an ill omen, in particular the screech owl and the great horned owl. There's a bit of a lore saying that the creatures with horns are particularly connected to the spirit world from the readings that I've found. There are various types of lore to attribute it to it, but one of the more interesting tidbits I learned was that there are many medicine men that could shapeshift into or communicate with owls, but there were also some with ill intentions. These people would use this ability to deliver death, illness, or even curses onto people, and so there was a great fear of them. Owls became a sign of danger and ill omen. I actually found out that the Cherokee Indians would use the same word for the great horned owls and witch, which I believe is pronounced skili.
Tonight's word is going to be skili, which translates to witch. And in the Cherokee culture, a witch is somebody who does the dark side of our medicine. They don't do the light side. They shapeshift into owls, or maybe even a dog, wolf, whatever, coyote. But owl is going to be the easiest one for them. In particular, a screech owl.
In an ironic bit of twist, a Greek word is very similar to that, being dog, skili. It all goes to show that there is kind of a loop to it, huh? Sorry, I know it's a little bit of meandering here, but what can I say? It was an interesting tangent. But back to the topic. Anyways, Henry, are there any other fun instances you can think of for showing how iconography may differ depending on the group that you're trying to reference, or even their region?
Other fun instances, you say? Where to start? I mean, you've mentioned how owls are viewed differently in other countries, but it isn't just owls. There are other interesting cultural depictions of animal iconography. Let's talk about man's best friend, dogs. Pretty positive connotations when we think about them, right? Most of the world would say so. In Asia, dogs are generally viewed as kind protectors and lucky animals by the Chinese people. They are one of the 12 animals on the Chinese zodiac, after all. It is said that a house owner would be very pleased if a stray dog runs into the house, because it indicates that fortune is coming. In Japan, the Inu are most often represented in folklore as the defenders of people. Traditional belief is that Inus have the magical ability to resist evil spirits and demons. In Mesopotamia, dogs were the symbol of Nisina, the goddess of healing and medicine, and her worshippers frequently dedicated small models of seated dogs next to her. In the Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian periods, dogs were used as emblems of magical protection. Coming over to Christianity, dogs represent faithfulness. However, there is one type of dog mentioned in Christian folklore that are called church grims. They are described to be black dogs that roam around Christian churches and the churchyards to keep those from committing sacrilege. There are so many variations of church grims out there, even modern versions where they are in space. Very cool, don't you think? However, in other cultures, dogs may have other connotations that are not as positive. For instance, death. In Egyptian mythology, dogs were associated with Anubis, the jackal-head god of the underworld. Moreover, Amhed was a martyr god from the underworld. He was depicted as a man with a head of a hunting dog who lived in a lake of fire. In Greek/Roman mythology, Cerberus was a three-headed, dragon-tailed watchdog who guarded the gates of Hades. So I'm sure that they're still a very good boy. Lastly, there is the black dog that is commonly seen as a motif in English, European, and American folklore. They are described as a supernatural, spectral, or demonic hellhound, unnaturally wide with yellow or red eyes. It is often connected with the devil, sometimes an omen of death, associated with electric storms, such as the Black Shuck appearances in Bungay, Suffolk, Crossroads, Barrows, as a fairy hound or something, places of execution and ancient pathways. Wow, that's like a lot of red flags I find in folklore. But note, when I was searching for dog-related emblems, I came across this emblem from a modern Major General by the name of Garrett Joseph Wosley. And look at that. In short, it matters vegetable, animal, and mineral. That is an emblem worthy of a modern Major General. Related to dogs, we got foxes. Also quite appropriate because, well, Rain is one, right? And while us on the channel might know you as fun, engaging, adorable, and funny, others might not think that way. And I'm not talking about the haters and trolls who hate furries for no reason. Foxes are usually known as tricksters in mythology and folklore. In Africa's Dagon mythology, the fox is reported to either be the trickster god of the desert, who embodies chaos. In Europe, there are quite a notable amount of fox tricksters, particularly Kumalisa, a female fox, particularly from Bulgarian and Russian folklore, and Renner the Fox, an anthropomorphic red fox trickster figure from medieval allegory Dutch, England, French, and German fables. In Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese folklores, foxes, such as the Huli Jing in China and Kitsune in Japan, are powerful spirits known for their highly mischievous and cunning nature. And they would take form of a female human to seduce men. Fun fact, in contemporary Chinese, the word Huli Jing is often used to describe the mistress, negatively in an extramarital affair. Other than tricksters, foxes can be viewed as messengers too. The fox god from Dagon mythology I mentioned before was also viewed as a messenger for the gods. In Sumerian mythology, the fox is known to be the messenger of Ninursak, the ancient Sumerian mother goddess of the mountains, and one of the 7 great deities of Sumer. In Japan, despite their mischievous and cunning nature, they are messengers of Inari, a Shinto kami, or spirit, and often sometimes help people. The Mochi people of ancient Peru worshipped the animals and often depicted the fox in their art. And they believed the fox used to be a warrior that used his mind to fight, never physical attacks. So as you can see, Rain, there are many different interpretations of animals across the world. Some good, some bad, some ugly. But in the end, it's whatever interpretation that you want. But in the end, whatever interpretation we want to include on our created emblem, that's down to how the people in your world and the players view it.
That's an absolutely amazing swath of information, and I'm definitely going to have to dig into that more, in particular learning about the Mochi people. That's such a cool take on the fox, and I'm interested in incorporating that type of thing into my own games and world building. I think it goes to show that depending on the world you've set up and the lore you've put into place, there can be so many variations on what might consider one note. Breathing life into a trope by changing how you approach the idea. I think it's important for people considering the designs and even world building to switch up how they consider the topics they engage with. After all, we can all get stuck in a rut. We have a lot to learn from other cultures with their own experiences. Engaging earnestly with another culture can spark a muse in your creativity, I'm sure. I want to thank you again for coming onto my channel and sharing your expertise and experiences with us. I'm going to remind folks that if you'd rather have someone with some experience making designs for your games, that Henry has a storefront up and takes commissions and is well worth it in my opinion. That said, with all this info you've been able to share with these fantastic listeners and watchers of my channel, what final do's and don'ts might you have for those that want to have a go at making themselves as we wrap things up?
Thanks again for inviting me to do this, Rain. It's been so much fun discussing emblems with a TTRPG enthusiast like you. And I hope everyone tuning into this found some of my tips useful. And if you didn't, then I still hope you found this interesting. Final bit of advice: keep an open mind and always stay curious. The do's and don'ts I shared come from my own learning by searching things online. And as I said, I am not an expert. But I am happy to share some of my knowledge and thought processes by creating emblems. I encourage everyone to do their research too. You might see an emblem design that I have never seen before, and that's great. There is a wealth of emblem designs out there, some good, some bad, to learn from, critique, and draw inspiration from. And if you create an emblem that doesn't get the reaction that you hoped for, it's okay. That's part of the process. As Bob Ross says, there are no mistakes, only happy little accidents. And it's from those accidents you can learn and improve for the future. More often than not, I go through multiple drafts until I get the one that the customer and myself am satisfied with. So whether you're a traditionalist making emblems that are historically accurate, or a artistic mad scientist that gives traditional middle finger, or maybe you lie somewhere in between, I'm not sure. I'm sure that whatever emblems that you create will be incredible and meaningful, no matter what path you take.
I just want to thank you again so much for coming onto the channel, Henry. If y'all can, please do remember, if you can give me a like, a share, a follow, a comment, subscribe, any of those things, it really does help out the channel. I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, for listening, and for engaging in this thing that is so important now, given the worldscape that we're in when it comes to art, that we try to make sure that we take things in and value art all the more because of what's happening now. If you guys can, I'd love to hear any types of things that you've done in your worlds, and if you can, comment about it down below, or if even better, if you have a Blue Sky account, please mention me on Blue Sky with the type of art for things you've made in your world, mentioning emblems, icons, stuff like that. I'd love to see it, and I'd love to share it. Don't forget that once we reach the follower goal of 1,000, I'm going to be trying to do a giveaway, but I'm going to make sure that I don't mention that too often because I kind of overshot it last time I tried doing it. But yeah, thank you guys so much again for listening, so much for watching, and so much for sticking around. But yeah, until then, tell better tales, and talk to y'all later. Bye. So, in a repeat of the previous one, unfortunately this section of the video stuff that he had sent me has been gone. So I'm going to be filling in for what he had said again. Just going to mention, this isn't stuff that I'm making up. This is a script that he had written, and I'm just following the words that he had said. Again, I'm sorry, Henry. I don't know what had happened to it, buddy. But he said, thanks again for inviting me to do this, Rain. It's been so much fun to discuss emblems with TTRPG enthusiasts like you. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone tuning in found some useful takeaways. And if you didn't, I still found it interesting, which I honestly really did. Part of the fun of doing this project was just listening to Henry get to talk about really cool stuff that I had never even considered, and that's part of why I do these videos. His last bit of final advice was to keep an open mind and always stay curious. The do's and don'ts that he had shared come with their own learning by searching things online. He again reiterates that he's not an expert. I tried to be playful and say that he was an expert in this, but you know how that works out. But he's just so modest. And he said that he was very happy to share his knowledge and his thought process in creating emblems. He says that I encourage everyone to do their own research, and you might even discover emblem designs that he has not even seen yet, and that'd be awesome. There's a wealth of emblem designs out on the internet and out in the world, both good and bad, to learn from, critique, and draw inspiration from. And if you create an emblem that doesn't get the reactions you hope for, that's okay. It's all part of the creative process. He then goes to quote Bob Ross and says, "There are no mistakes, only happy little accidents," which, come on, we all appreciate Bob Ross here. And from those accidents, you can learn and improve for the future. More often than not, I always go through multiple drafts of emblems until I get to that one that the customer or myself is satisfied with. And again, that's what Henry said. Whether you're a traditionalist making emblems that are historically authentic, or an artistic mad scientist who gives tradition the middle finger, or a bit of both. And I'm sure the emblems you create will be incredible and meaningful no matter the path you choose. And of course, my dog comes in here to say hi. Here, Tuss, perch. Can you help me out? Come here. Say goodbye to the viewers at home. Mwah. Happy little accidents, right, guys? Mwah. Good boy. But yeah, so Henry's bit for this one was missing again. I'm sorry, guys. This is what happens when you try to do multi-year-long things back and forth. Henry is a very busy student. But now we're going to go back to PNG tuber version of me. So there we go.